I'm Mark Wallace. This is True North Studio, where we live the Word and walk with power. And today our title is Joy, Paul's Prison Perspective. And recently I've wondered how Paul was able to keep such an amazing, positive perspective while being incarcerated in Rome. Now, whether he was just chained to a Roman soldier who didn't want to be chained to him, or he was in a hole somewhere, he might have done both. We don't know. We do know that he was chained. How was he able to maintain such a giving attitude wherein fear and death were all around him? Because remember that that Roman Empire wasn't like we think. You know, the penal system of the day wasn't designed for correction like we think. It was nothing like we think. Like I shared last week, it was deadly, it was brutal, it was bloody, and that was Rome. You obey or you die. And to understand how Paul was able to sustain this great and delightful attitude while he was in a Roman prison, to understand how we too can enjoy this calm and delightful attitude when we feel imprisoned is the purpose of this teaching. It happens to all of us. We're gonna see how Paul used everything that he was. Paul used everything he had ever been taught. He used everything he had ever done and everything he had ever believed to help him maintain his positive believing and maintain his joy. It's funny how there's a theme in Philippians. And just like there's a theme in Ephesians. In Ephesians, you'll see over and over and over again the word grace. And in Philippians, it is the dominant word in Philippians is joy. And both of these were written in times when when Paul was imprisoned. And if you study the word out, this grace and the word joy all come from the same root word, of charis. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And so this is the theme. This is going to be the theme of this joy, Paul's prison perspective. And it runs through the book of Philippians like the Colorado River flowing from the Rockies and bringing life to the western states. You know, joy is defined in the dictionary as a feeling of great pleasure or happiness. And joy to the ancient Greeks had a deeper definition. And in Scripture, the word for joy means to maintain a calm delight. A calm delight. You know, to be calmly happy. And to be calm because you know you're cared for. Now, when you're in prison, that's a hard perspective. See, the Romans didn't necessarily always feed their prisoners, just so you know. And I don't have time to totally go into this. And so if you were going to live, even if you were chained to a soldier, you would have to have somebody bring food in to you. If you wanted to clean up the mess that you made when you went to the bowl, whatever they had in those days, somebody was going to have to throw that out because that Roman soldier was not going to walk you outside. You had to have people take care of you. And so if you read these epistles, you see all the people that came in and were helpers of Paul. They changed the straw. They changed the sheet, so to speak. They fed him. They helped him to get through this time. We cannot do this alone. But we have to maintain our own joy. Nobody can do that for us. Maintain a calm delight. And joy is what kept Paul alive and alert during his imprisonment. And joy will do the same for us. You know, joy was Paul's prison perspective. You know, supercharge your believing with joy. And here's what Paul taught 4 or 5 years before he was imprisoned. And this is in Romans 15. Don't need to turn there. We're going to read verse 13. It says, "Now the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, that ye may abound in hope through the power of the Holy Ghost." I mean, you think about that. It's being in prison in Rome is sort of a hopeless situation. We don't have prisons like that. You're not just lost in the system typically. Maybe some people do, but it would be very rare in today's world. But they could easily get lost. They could die and nobody would pay attention, unless of course you're chained to a Roman soldier. Then he would know. You know, one of the prisons in Rome that Paul would have heard about and possibly had been in was this one. All it was a hole in the ground that was 12 feet under the ground. This prison, it used to be a cistern, and they would drop people in through the hole. You're literally, thrown into prison, and there people would languish, and sometimes it would be right before trial, just to make sure they didn't run. They would put people in the hole, so to speak, so they wouldn't take off. Especially if they didn't have somebody that would pay for the crime for them financially. And that would be house arrest. House arrest, you could be with a friend as long as he would guarantee X amount of dollars we're like a bond, I guess, today. So, well, enough on that. See, fill you with all joy and peace in believing. Paul practiced what he preached, we're going to see. Paul believed that we can reach our goals as we add the ingredients of joy and peace to our believing. If you don't have joy and peace, you really never have believing. If you have joy and peace, you will have believing, because it's all a mindset. It's a heart set. It's a life set. Background. Now, what we think of prison is much different than what Paul saw. The Roman prisons were never designed as punishment like ours are. You get punished, you go to prison for 5 years or 20 years. I went and saw a guy one time in a ministry I was once involved in, and he had killed his girlfriend because he caught her in bed with somebody. And so I went to this medium security prison to visit this guy, and he was going to be there for 23 years. That's his punishment, is being pulled out of society and just kept in some system for 23 years. The Romans didn't think of prison was only a place to hold you until trial. And trial almost always ended up in death or exile. So if you went to prison, there was a high probability you were going to be killed. And one of the ways they killed people was strangulation. We also know crucifixion's a way. There was a lot of ways, but it wasn't fun to be there and to have all this stuff in your head and to see bodies dragged out or whatever these guys saw wouldn't have been fun for Paul. And he would have heard the stories from don't you think the Roman soldiers would have told him horror stories? They would. That's what people do. You always see these pictures in Christian books, with these nice, clean little Roman soldiers sitting there, chained next to Paul on some reclining bed, sun coming in the window, birds flying by. And, it wasn't necessarily like that. Sure, he did witness to some of these guys, and some of them responded. In fact, it says one time that the whole Praetorian Guard was aware of what he was doing. And the Praetorian Guard in Rome, every one of them was a centurion. They became so powerful an entity in history that they were the emperor makers. A person couldn't be an emperor unless he went through, unless the Praetorian Guard chose them. So the military amassed way too much power in that day. But again, I'm off track here. And so they were designed just to hold a person till trial. There was no right to a speedy trial. They would allow people to stay in prison for years. Paul already 2 years, because they wanted the situation to cool down. They wanted other people to die off or that prisoner to die off so they didn't have to deal with it. They could be waiting for years and years and years if they appealed to Caesar, which Paul did. They were simply designed for holding a person until trial. And, every citizen knew that breaking the Roman law usually ended up in slavery or death. And the Romans had 12 basic laws. Now, under each law, there's a lot of sub-laws, and they call them the 12 tables. Look it up sometime. And here are a few excerpts from the 12 tables. Now, this is Roman law. And this was written in brass. This is posted in public for everyone to see. Just a few of them. Unpaid debt ends in slavery or death. A dreadfully deformed child will be put to death. If a person sang a song that slandered another, he shall be clubbed to death. If a businessman defrauded his client, he will be killed. A false witness will be thrown off a high cliff to his death. If a judge receives a bribe, he will receive capital punishment, death. And on the latter side, putting someone to death who was not convicted is forbidden and may end in your death. I mean, so their laws were tough. Obey or die. This was the Rome of Paul's day. This is the legal system that he was in with. Now, the Judeans would have already killed him if he had gone to trial in Israel, because he was a blasphemer, and they would have killed him. That's why he appealed to Caesar. But this is where he wrote 4 of the epistles during this 2-year span. See, Paul knew that Roman incarceration often ended in death, but he had to keep his head together. Now, what about you? What if you have a situation that seems impossible? Sort of like Paul. What did he do with his mind? Through all this, Paul was able to keep his head together because he trained himself to maintain a constant level of joy. Paul was accustomed to delighting in tough situations, not complaining. We'll see why in a minute. Paul trained himself to see opportunities within a crisis. See the opportunity within a crisis. Always look for the silver lining, folks. Always. You know, the word crisis, this is a definition, I looked it up. It just means the turning point, a crucial or a decisive point. It's your pivot point, your tipping point, your turning point. You know, when you make that decision. So that's what we have to do. What is it? And many times, some of us are at those points right now. What are we going to do now? That's a crisis. You know, we all have these. And how can we too draw from our lives to better our situation? I was thinking, Paul, like I told you earlier, Paul went back into his life, and we're gonna talk about some of his past in a little bit. And he drew from everything. He drew when he was good. He drew when he was bad. He drew from the pagan culture. He drew from the Jewish culture. He drew from everything and he took all the positives and he jumbled them together and put them in his head, and boom, then he stayed focused on what he wanted. It's not easy to do when death is knocking. You know, in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. Albert Einstein. Winston Churchill said, A pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity. An optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. Here's one. Opportunity often comes disguised in the form of misfortune or temporary defeat. Napoleon Hill. Opportunity may not come looking like you think, but it's always temporary. The defeat's always temporary. Paul maintained a mindset of joy no matter what was happening around him. Joy was the key to Paul's success in prison. Joy can be the key to our success in whatever prison we have encased ourselves or have been encased. Genetics, training, and passion. And go to Philippians chapter 3. See, Paul was brought up to think high thoughts in good times and high thoughts in bad times. Paul thought highly of his ability to think highly. Philippians 3, we're going to read 4 through 7. Though I might also have confidence in the flesh, if any other man thinketh he hath whereof he might trust in the flesh, I more. Circumcised the 8th day, of the stock of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, and Hebrew of the Hebrews. As touching the law, a Pharisee. Concerning zeal, persecuting the church. Touching the righteousness which is in the law, blameless. But what things were gained to me, those I counted loss for Christ. See, Paul here, while in prison chained to a guard, talks about his heritage and his once brutal persecution of Christians. He was proud of where he came from and even prouder of where he was going and what he had overcome. Now remember, Paul, when he was a young man, he just held on to the robes of the guys who pummeled Stephen to death with huge rocks. He saw it. And of course, a lot of preachers, they talk, well, that's when he heard Stephen's talk, and that stuck with him, and that's why he changed. That's when Paul truly became bloodthirsty. When he saw that, then he became the most evil, bloodthirsty, murderous torturer of Christians that there ever has been. There's never been anybody likened unto Paul. Just like that we read last week about that one friend of St. Augustine. When he saw the gladiatorial games, he was hooked. He had the bloodlust. Paul got the bloodlust at that point, but he overcame. That's not easy to do. Somebody changing from being a terrorist to being on the other side is a total change. So whatever your situation is it mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, financial? It can be a total change, a total 180. Why not? God's not limited. What have you already overcome? Hang on to that. Go back to that. The answer that you find, if you start going back through your life and figuring out all the times you overcame something, you'll find your key to joy. Now, 2 points I want to bring up from Paul's pedigree. 1, he was from the tribe of Benjamin, and 2, he was a Pharisee. Now, this is all going to help us understand how Paul was able to maintain joy in the midst of hell. And if you can somehow extrapolate the lesson out of this and apply it in your own life, you too can turn hell into joy. And so I asked myself, why would Paul bring this stuff up about Benjamin, tribe of Israel, Hebrew, Pharisee, all this stuff, to people like the Philippians who had no idea what he's talking about? How many of you know what the worldly or the thought of somebody from the tribe of Benjamin was. I mean, just think. I mean, but there's a stigma to it. You know, like if I said, hey, I'm from New York City. You already have something in your head. If I was raised there, what about, I'm from Texas. There's a stigma, right? Now Colorado has a stigma, right? Dudes and dudettes. You know, I mean, you understand. If somebody said they're from if they were raised in Germany, you think a certain thing. Do you think a Russian thinks of a German the same as we think of a German? No. You think a German thinks of a Russian like a no. There's stigmas. There's stereotypes. I looked them up. They were so nasty. I didn't even want to say them on all the countries, all the major countries. I mean, the one that kept coming up for the U.S. was obese. These are from the internet where they put what people say about. That's the stigma for Americans, right now. And I mean, so in the world, people from Australia, drunkards. Beer, drinking too much beer. Every country, you think of Bavaria, it's still lederhosen. I mean, there's every country has. If I said Iran, that means something different now. Syria means something different. When I was a kid, I heard of Iraq and Iran, and it was just a joke. I mean, you hit somebody in a certain place and you ran. Iraq and Iran. I mean, it didn't mean anything. So. I ask, why would Paul bring this up to people like the Philippians who had no idea what he was talking about? It's because it mattered to Paul. It meant something to Paul. What means something to you? It helped him keep perspective. It helped him appreciate his life with a view towards bettering his situation. He pulled the gold out from all these situations in his life. What did he even learn when he was persecuting the Christians? I'll bet there was a bunch of things he learned about aggressiveness and investigating and thinking and pushing. And I mean, who knows? He was going to fight for his rights and he was going to fight for his life. Because in reality, you're the only one that can do it. We help each other believe, but we don't make each other believe. We help each other with our joy. We become companions in that joy, but really that person has to decide that. So how to maintain your joy, or how to keep your calm delight. Every time I say that, that song "Afternoon Delight" pops into my head. What are you going to do? You ever notice how the newness of your new car seems to wear off pretty quickly? I mean, when it was I'm going to take care of this forever. You're washing it every day. You're cleaning it. You're vacuuming the mats. You're doing all this stuff. Somebody puts their feet on your dash. Get your feet off my dash. You can't eat in my car. It's a new car. And then in a year, it's like, whatever. Your dog's in there. You're pulling a boat. You got pictures and paintings stacked in the back seat, and you got Cheetos down between them, or tofu, whatever you're into, or that new love. How does it fade? Why does it fade? Or your new hard-won job now is beginning to get boring, and you worked so hard for that thing or that degree. Your recent weight loss is now just the normal you. Ho-hum. In an article from Psychology Today called "How to Keep Happiness from Fading," I came across 2 simple solutions to the age-old problem of drifting back to the place that we started after a big change happened in our life. Quote, psychologists call this phenomenon hedonic adaptation. Hedonic adaptation. And the idea is that no matter how good something makes us feel, or for the record, how bad, most of the time we drift back to where we started, emotionally speaking. End of quote. That's human nature, folks. And that's what we're battling against. We start something and then we just go right back. It's hard to change, and it's even harder to stay changed. After we make a big change in our lives or careers or relationships or our weight, we have to do something to maintain that euphoria. I remember when I was 17, I was backpacking in the Rocky Mountains between Durango and Silverton. And I woke up one day, I've told this story before, but I woke up one day and I could see perfectly, 20/20 vision. And I've worn glasses since I was 7. And I thought, this is great. And I was enjoying, we were doing camping, starting to take down the camp and getting ready to hike, 20 miles or some ridiculous amount, or 15 miles. And I thought, this is too good to be true. And back then I wore contact lenses. So I popped in the contact lenses and I could see just the same. And then when I popped them back out, I couldn't see anymore. That happened twice on that trip. And I've never regained 20/20 vision again since then. I believe I got healed twice. I was a brand new Christian. And I was learning, I was reading the Bible. I had read it through a couple of times, and I really believed this stuff. But apparently I didn't believe it long enough. You got to hang on to your healing. Hang on to every semblance of healing is what we're going to see here in a minute. Hang on to any little bright spot that you possibly can and focus on that in your life. You'll find that there's many of them. There's many bright spots. The author of this article, Heidi Grant Halverson, PhD, in her work on the science of success said, quote, don't despair. It's possible to make happiness last by slowing down the adaptation process or even halting it altogether. 2 anti-adaptation tools were effective in sustaining gains in happiness over time: variety and appreciation. Variety and appreciation. These will make sense to you in a second. The article says that in order to slow down the letdown, we must continuously add variety and then remind ourselves to constantly appreciate the change. You can never stop thinking about it. Then you have to add a little spice to it. Variety. Here's an example. When we get to our goal weight, you promise to buy yourself one new outfit a month. Or a new gun, or whatever your pleasure is. When I get down to 200, I'm gonna you fill in the blank. Gonna go on a vacation. Do something. And then I'm going to do something, you have to do something consistently. Add variety in there. Keep it fresh. What about a relationship? You want to keep that love new and fresh? Then you got to keep it spicy, keep it fun, keep it interesting. Keep adding good stuff in there. Keep variety in that thing. If you finally get yourself out of a harmful relationship, then set a goal to talk to one person of the opposite sex a day or a week. I wouldn't say any less than that. But do something to just add. You finally got out of that. Now what am I going to do to keep it fun and exciting? You got to do something, or else it's going to be, now I'm bored. Mix it up. Maintain variety. That's step one. And the second one is appreciation. And after you get that new job or find that new love, then turn your mind into delighting them. Appreciate them. Savor that job. If you've spent 4 years trying to get a certain job and you got it, and it's beginning to get boring already, figure out what you wanted in that thing in the first place and just savor it. Savor it. Just enjoy it, like slowly eating that favorite meal of yours instead of gulping it down in 2 minutes. Savor it. Be grateful for where you are as compared to where you just came from. Maintain your thankfulness. Quote, this is continuing this article, when we appreciate our positive experiences, then we turn our mind's eye toward them again and again in joy and wonder. We don't just make our happiness last, we kick it up a notch too. Quote, human beings spend a lot of time trying to figure out what will make them happy, but not nearly enough time trying to hang on to the happiness they already have. In a way, this is like focusing all your energy on making more money without giving any thought what you're going to do with the money you've already earned. The key to wealth, like the key to happiness, is to not only look for new opportunities, but to make the most of the ones you've been given. End of quote. What do you already have? And build from there. Build from what you already have. Are you making the best of what you already have, or do you pine for what you want? You know, Paul thinks that no matter the situation, that he can handle it. And we're going to look at a positive perspective from Paul in prison that he wrote to the Philippians. And go to chapter 4, and we're going to read 10 through 13. I'm going to read it from the Amplified. Philippians 4:10. I was made very happy in the Lord that now you have revived your interest in my welfare after so long a time. You were indeed thinking of me, but you had no opportunity to show it. Remember, Paul needed money to live. He needed money to stay alive and to be able to go to trial, or he would have died in prison. 11. Not that I'm implying that I was in any personal want, for I have learned how to be content, satisfied to the point where I am not disturbed or disquieted in whatever state I am. Nothing rattled Paul. Verse 12, I know how to be abased and to live humbly in straitened circumstance. And I know also how to enjoy plenty and live in abundance. I've learned in any and all circumstances the secret of facing every situation, whether well-fed or going hungry, having a sufficiency and enough to spare without going and being in want. 13. I have strength for all things in Christ, who empowers me. I am ready for anything and equal to anything through him who infuses inner strength into me. I am self-sufficient in Christ's sufficiency. That's quite a statement to say, being chained to somebody, in a Roman jail or whatever it was. Paul truly believed he was equal to any problem and ready for any challenge. What's your challenge? Are you ready? Are you equal to it? Or is it taking mastery over you? If you're equal to it, you have joy. Joy will help you be equal to it. You are equal to any problem. You are ready for any challenge. That's how God designed it. What's the point of the Christ? What's the point of the Word and the Spirit of God? Quote, every block of stone has a statue inside it, and it's the task of the sculptor to discover it. Michelangelo. You see, every block of stone has a statue inside it, and it's the task of the sculptor to discover it. What will you sculpt out of your life You've been given a block. What are you going to do with it? Quote, each morning sees some task begun. Each evening sees it close. Something attempted, something done, has earned a night's repose. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Look back. What did we do today? You probably did a lot more than you think. Hang on to the positive. We can all look back and think about all the things we didn't do right. What did you do right? What did your mate do right? Your friend do right? Hang on to the good. Do something every day to improve your situation, and you'll sleep better in the process. Sculpt your own success. You can do. Include variety into your newfound success, and always appreciate any positive change. That's the first key to joy. Include variety into your newfound success, and always appreciate any positive change. Now, the tribe of Benjamin. This is interesting. He mentioned this. He told it to a bunch of pagans. They don't know the tribe of Benjamin from the tribe of the Apaches. It wouldn't have meant anything. What do you think of yourself? Self-image is the big key to joy. Maxwell Maltz said, self-image sets the boundaries of individual accomplishment. It's good. A lot of people said something similar. Joyce Brothers said, a strong positive image is the best possible preparation for success. Paul knew this. See, Paul mentions that he was from the tribe of Benjamin. What does this mean to him? And what should it mean to us? Well, the Jewish Encyclopedia says, quote, the tribe of Benjamin is initially described in the Bible as being very pugnacious, end of quote. Pugnacious means you want to fight. You want to get in the fray. And when a Judean thought about someone from the tribe of Benjamin, they thought of people looking for the fight. They thought of people who loved to mix it up. Years before Paul, they taught their sons to fight both right-handed and left-handed, to shoot bows left-handed and right-handed. And they wanted them to become ambidextrous fighters. They could throw stones equally well with the right hand as they could with the left hand. I remember when I played handball in college. Yet I would just practice for an hour or so, just throwing the ball with my left hand and just practicing that and trying to only use one side because we were so heavily I was used to using the right hand. Be like if you're a baseball player and you always batted right-handed. Well, try to bat left-handed. It's a whole different thing. Well, they taught their sons to be warriors both ways. They were known to be brave, they were known to be aggressive, and they were known to be strong, and they were not people to mess with. The Benjamins, the tribe of Benjamin. What about you? Where are you from? What's your background? How has that influenced you? You from the Western Slope, Colorado? Well, that's different than being from Colorado Springs. It's a different lifestyle there, even though it's still Colorado. From California, that's different. You see, from New York City, Salt Lake City. Where are you from? Alaska? Are you of Polish heritage? What is it? It all means something to you, right? But it may not mean anything to me because you're the one who has to build your own joy. You pull from your Irish background. Well, what are they known for? Well, take the best of that and make that you again. They have a high tolerance for pain. They're hard to piss off. You can't psychoanalyze the Irish. That's what, who was that? Freud said. He said it's impossible to psychoanalyze the Irish. Why? Because they're just going to mess with you. They probably just messed back with him. Got his goat. Anybody who gets your goat controls you, basically. So you keep your head together. So if that's your background, then take the best of that. Nobody gets your goat. Nothing, be pugnacious. What's the little Irish thing, the Notre Dame? The Fighting Irish, right? That's what they were known for. Josephine's dad, raised in Italy, came to the States. His friends, he liked to hang out with the Irish because they were a lot of fun. But when they started fighting, he would leave. He liked to party, but he didn't want to fight. Can't blame him. It's just different. Whereas to them, it was fun to fight. You see, that was part of the party. It wasn't a party unless it broke out into a fight. Oh, man. So you get the point there. And where does who you are make your mind go? What on the positive, on the strong side? I'm from Texas. I was born in Texas. I was raised a lot in Texas. And so there's a certain pride in being from there. And if you're out somewhere else outside of Texas and you hear somebody talking against it, usually you'll stand up for the name. Now, not every state does that, but Texas is stupid like that, you see. But it's, don't mess with Texas, right? You see the bumper sticker. But you get it. But I didn't make Texas. I just was raised there. But still, just because you're it's part of you. You don't mess with me, kind of thing. And so you take the good from wherever you were raised. What you think you are makes your believing go places. What is a Pharisee? Paul would mention his religious upbringing to these pagans turned Christian. Why? They're going, Pharisee, Sadducee? There was three major sects in the Judean religion at that time. There was Pharisee, Sadducee, and the Essenes. And the Essenes were like monks, like Catholic monks. And it was all male. Very small group, as you can imagine. It didn't grow too much. The Sadducees were the upper crust. They were the elite of the Judeans. They owned the Judean politics. They did not believe in spiritual power, did not believe in the devil, did not believe in angels. They did not believe in raising from the dead, the resurrection. They probably didn't really believe in Christ, and they probably didn't really even believe in God. They believed that religion was equivalent to politics, and then it was just to help your situation. And if you read what some of the writers said about these guys, they would basically kill their own brother for an advantage, financially or politically. That's the Sadducees. They were the upper crust. They were the ruling group, and they knew it. And nobody gets in my way. Now, Pharisees, of which Paul said he was, that was the most common sect. And they took the law of Moses. Now, what they did is they even added more laws. They made up all these more and more multiple laws to keep you doing the one single thing. They wanted, they took the law of Moses and added even more laws in order to force people to conform or force themselves to conform. Paul was raised to be over the top. He was raised to be stricter even than Moses or God expected. God didn't even expect them to do it like that. Yet the Pharisees did it. They went a step further. This is how Paul was raised. Everybody, all the regular Jews, they go this far, but we're going this far and this far in this family. He was raised to think of himself as an ambidextrous warrior, extremely versatile and totally disciplined. He was going to go beyond the call of duty. And this was the attitude with which he once attacked the Christians. And now he's using that same advantage to attack his problems. And this is how he dealt with his mind. And this is how Paul retained his joy. Now, he was also a Roman citizen, Paul. He was a Roman citizen. And one time when he was arrested and about to be flogged, he told his captor, you may want to think about flogging me, about beating me, because I'm a Roman. And they're thinking, how can you're a Jew, how can you be a Roman? Because it was so odd to be a Roman citizen and to be a Jew. It was like unheard of. Be like somebody immigrating here right now from Iran. You know, you're an American citizen? You know, I mean, it was bizarre. And so, you know, this soldier said, I obtained my freedom. I bought it. I paid a high price, because you could buy citizenship at that time. Or you were born into it, or you were freed. Like if you had been a slave for a certain number of years, then they would emancipate you and you could become a Roman citizen. It's usually for a political favor of some sort. Now see, so he was a Roman citizen. He had all the rights and voting rights of a Roman. And then the city he was from, now this is going to make a lot of sense now. He was from his hometown was a town called Tarsus. And this is not in Israel. Paul was not raised in Israel. And this is continuing on the topic of self-image and its effect on maintaining our joy. And this is his hometown. What about your hometown? If you were raised in one town. I was raised on Air Force bases, so it's hard to, you know, say that any one place, but they're all about the same, you know. It was, you know, so like I said, it was unusual for a Jew to be a Roman citizen, but during the time of Paul, a person from Tarsus paid no taxes or tariffs. It was called a free city because they were so successful in governing themselves and doing business. Rome said, okay, we're not going to govern you. You can govern yourself and you will pay no taxes. Now tell me, do you think business people from all over the world went there? It was said that anybody who was a merchant in Tarsus would prosper 5 times over. You know, and this was filled with different cultures, you know, different languages, different beliefs, and all these rubbed off on anybody raised there. You can't help it, can you? If you're raised in a certain environment, it's going to rub off on you. You can't help it. And one of the major thoughts in Tarsus was part of its educational system, and it was called Stoicism or Stoic. And Paul was influenced by this dominant philosophy of his city and the Roman Empire of that day. And the Roman Empire adopted this Stoic thought. Now we think of Stoic as being like stiff and you know, people like this, but really there's more to that. The Stoics taught that destructive emotions, hurtful self-thoughts resulted from errors in judgment. And they preached and believed that a person of moral and intellectual perfection would not suffer such emotions. And a Stoic believes that we should accept what happens without complaining or showing emotion. Basically, when a Stoic finds himself in a bad situation or thinking poorly about themselves, they accept the situation without emotion and then commence to deal with it. I'm unemotionally going to handle this situation. I'm just going to go to work. That's a Stoic. Like sometimes doing those jobs you don't want to do. Clean out the cow stall. You know, muck the stall. You know, clean out something. You know, I mean, whatever. Clean your garage. Chapter 4, verse 8, finally, brethren. Now just think, this is what Paul's thinking. This is what Paul's thinking. This is what he's telling us to think. This is when he was in prison, knowing that it could lead to death, and usually does. Now, we don't know what happened to Paul. Half the historians say they killed him and executed him, but there's no proof of that. So we don't know what happened to him. His life just sort of ends. Luke said he spent 2 whole years in his own hired house, and that's last you hear of Paul. You see, but finally, verse 8, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. Does that sound stoic? That's exactly what it sounds like. You just make yourself think the good thoughts, no matter the situation. That Stoic thought rubbed out. We're living it. Paul was able to communicate things that nobody before him could ever communicate because they weren't in the culture. They just couldn't. A Jew could not understand this. He was a Jew, but he was raised in Tarsus, a very pagan city, very elite, rich pagan city. Whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. Those things which you have both learned and received and heard and seen in me, do. And what will happen? The God of peace shall be with you. Peace and joy in believing. Peace and joy in believing. Look up those 2 words. You see how they connect so many times in the Bible. Peace and joy. Peace and joy. Love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. They're both in the fruit of the Spirit. Yeah, I mean it's wild. It's wild. And again, Philippians 4:13. For I have strength for all things in Christ who empowers me. I'm ready for anything. I'm equal to anything. Through him who infuses inner strength into me, I am self-sufficient in Christ's sufficiency. Does that sound like Paul? Does that sound like somebody from the tribe of Benjamin? Does that sound like somebody who's a Pharisee? Sound like somebody from Tarsus? Sound like somebody who's also schooled in Israel? Yes, all the above. What about you? What is your schooling? What can you take out of your life and your upbringing and your heritage and your background and your city? Even if it seemed junky, there's good stuff in there you can pull out. Joy is the golden theme in Philippians. Joy is the glue that holds the heart together. Joy holds your believing together. Remember, joy is that delight, calm delight. He says, okay, I can deal with this. In fact, I'm excited to deal with this. It's calm delight. I understand my situation. I'm here. I'm in it. Okay? I see it. Okay, now what am I going to do? It's just a calm, focused delight. It's a perpetual smile on a peaceful mind. That's joy. Remember, joy is translated calm delight. What do we need to do with our minds to maintain the mindset of that calm delight? I'm going to quickly go through these 14 verses. I'll hit some of them. If you just type in joy, rejoice, and rejoicing, you'll see. But I'm going to do it fast. Philippians 1:4. Always in every prayer of mine for you all, making a request with joy. What then? Verse 18. Notwithstanding every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is preached, and I therein do rejoice, yea, and will rejoice. Verse 25 of chapter 1. And having this confidence, I know that I shall abide and continue with you all for your furtherance and joy of faith. Verse 26, that your rejoicing may be more abundant in Jesus Christ by me coming to you again. He saw himself getting out of there. 2:2, fulfill ye my joy, that ye be like-minded, having the same love, being of one accord, of one mind. Verse 16 of chapter 2, holding forth the word of life, that I may rejoice in the day of Christ, that I have not run in vain, neither labored in vain. Verse 17 of chapter 2, yea, and if I be offered upon the sacrifice and service of your faith, I joy, and I rejoice with you all. 18, for this same cause also do ye joy, and rejoice with me. 28, I send him therefore the more carefully, that when ye see him again, ye may rejoice, that I may be the less sorrowful. 3:1, finally, brethren, rejoice in the Lord. To write the same things unto you, to me indeed is not grievous, but for you it is safe. 3:3, for we are the circumcision which worship God in the Spirit, and rejoice in Christ Jesus, and have no confidence in the flesh. 4:1, therefore, my brethren, dearly beloved and longed for, my joy and crown, so stand fast in the Lord, my dearly beloved. Look how he thought about the people. How do you think of yourself? Verse 4:4, rejoice in the Lord always. And again I say, rejoice. The last one, verse 10, but I rejoice in the Lord greatly, that now at the last your care of me hath flourished again, wherein you were careful, but ye lacked opportunity. He needed them, and they surely needed him. As we find a way to maintain joy in our life, our believing will soar. When Paul was imprisoned in Rome, he knew it was potentially deadly. He relied on everything he had ever learned to help him keep his joy and keep his believing calm. Stay cool. When you find yourself in a situation, decide to handle it without emotion. Fill your head with only positives about yourself and your past. Look for any positives in the situation that you can possibly find. And find your escape by heading toward the light and keeping your head in the light. And once you get out of that situation, maintain your deliverance by keeping things fresh and staying thankful. Want to get out of your personal problem or your bad situation? Then remember that a perspective of calm delight worked for Paul and will work for us. Joy was Paul's prison perspective. God bless.